Hey YouTube, we're here with the Sunbird, also known as the Hawkeye, for obvious reasons, for those of you who know what a Hawkeye is. Alright, this motor, it sucks. I'm replacing it, and this is my goal, is to replace it with this big honkin' 810 kV motor. Obviously it won't fit in the frame, so I don't have to worry about the complexity of that application, or that portion of that application. So what we're going to do, oh, and I also need to fix this canopy. I told my friend I would fix this canopy. This is for his ASW 28. Mine is in pieces, his is still technically flying, so we need to fix that. Got the soldering iron hot, or getting hot, because these pins are going to be bigger than what I designed into my electronic speed control here. But this electronic speed control will be just fine to support this. So my first step in replacing this motor, of course, is going to be getting the nose cone spinner off. Just grabbing a couple of these. Also going to need a crescent wrench for the nut. So we'll get that stuff going right now. Flaps are gonna happen someday, guys, but I gotta get the motor working first. Okay, so there's a Phillips screwdriver here, Phillips screw here. Shoot, I could probably just wiggle the thing off, but I'm not gonna do that. I want to be able to use this prop shaft for something else down the road. The prop shaft is actually okay. It's just that the dang it. Okay, so incidentally there's a mark on this spinner because we had balanced the spinner, remember, in one of the previous videos, and there's the piece of electrical tape right there, so the mark mates up with the mark on here. It's very subtle, but you can see it in person. Okay, sometimes when I get a motor that's bad, what I was trying to say earlier, and I moved on, is that I want to be able to use this for another application. Well, what application would that be? It's broken, right? Well, the application would be something consistent with, and I don't know if you guys can make that out, but what's happened with this spinner is that there's almost threads marked into there, because, and this is where it broke off, it's very short. It used to be about this long, and I cut it down, and then it was on there and it broke off. These threads give a good break point, so not probably the best application. If this doesn't work, I'm going to buy another motor like this. It's brand new though. And let me get this Allen wrench. I think this is the size I need to release this motor. In fact, it's kind of funny. I think this is the same stinking motor that I have on this plane, and this plane is ballsy. Which is totally weird if that's exactly the same. I'll have to take it off to verify though. So that tells me for sure that there's something not quite right about this motor, because, and you can see this is covered in CA just to keep the wires from separating and stuff. Okay, so there should be a set screw somewhere in here. Yeah, there's a set screw right there. Okay, so we're just going to back this off. And this is the motor mount, so we can get the motor out, and then we can get to the screws that hold the motor mount on. Okay, so there's usually a couple of set screws. Okay, there's a second. And this is the sort of thing that you'll stick this into a bag or something so that you don't have to worry about losing stuff later. Now look at that, guys. Very interesting. I think I see what's wrong. See these leads that are separate? They should be attached. Oops, sorry guys. I'm going to redo that little section there. You see what's going on here? These leads are separated from these leads, which means that some of the coils are not energizing, which is throwing the timing off. Now, that also means that this motor is weaker than it should be. Holy crappers, I can't believe the thing even flies. See this? There's a bank. There's a bank inside this heat shrink here. Here's a bank of wires, and then here's a bank of wires, and about half of them are missing their leads. And then on this bank, some of them are missing too. So maybe someday I'll figure out how to rewind these things and we might have a better crack at properly repairing it. Sorry guys, I had to move my table a little bit. Alright, so now that the motor is off and I can access these screws, I think my grandpa did nuts inside, which I'm really nervous about now. Oh, for the love of Pete. Pretty sure he used nuts. Oh, okay, well, God bless it. That's going to be fun. Okay, so you see I put this little foamy piece in here. That is to protect the LiPo in the event of a crash or just a shift. Yep, there's the nuts that are loose. Son of a gun. See the nuts and bolts? So what I have to do is I have to try to figure out, maybe I can just put my finger in there and spin it out. Yeah, actually I can. That's awesome. So I'm just using my index finger to hold the side of the nut. And it's coming out. Okay, so it just fell to the bottom. Grab this magnet. Well, that didn't work as good as I thought it might. Let's move on to the next one. But first we'll... Okay, there must be enough residual glue around here that isn't going to pop off easy. Okay, so just break it free, then you can reach in there and hold the back side of the nut. Okay, this one kind of walked out better like I figured it might. Stick that on there. That'll come out when we pull the motor out, of course. I may try to do some investigation, see if I can fix that too. The motor. Once it's out, I could actually maybe just fix the motor too. But we got this problem with the prop shaft being broke free. Okay, so that feels like it's out. Okay, cool. So we'll just lay that stuff aside. We can pull the motor mount out. Okay. So there you have it, guys. Got the 2 set screws in there. And then we've got the, of course, the motor here. And so our next step is going to be to... That's just the CA pulled off the heat shrink and whatnot. Okay, so I have to figure out how I keep hitting my light here. I could conceivably pull that wing off. I gotta get this stuff out. Okay, that's hot glue, so why don't we just do it this way? You got a hot soldering iron like this. You gotta give it some tender love and care every once in a while when you're walking by. Keep it clean or you'll ruin the tip. It's probably already hard enough on it as it is. Okay, what do I need? Forceps. Forceps. Alright, so this step is going to be relatively simple in that we just basically need to peel. Yeah, that's what I was hoping would happen. See? Peeled out kind of a big chunk of the hot glue, and the hot glue doesn't give excellent adhesion to the heat shrink, so that worked out nice. Didn't really expect it to go that smooth. And then over here, I mean, I've done it before and it's gone smooth, but it just usually doesn't go quite that smooth. That's why I use hot glue and not CA for this portion. Okay, great, got that all out. Now, basically just need to pull off a little bit of residual hot glue, undo the plugs, pull the motor out. Okay, so the interesting part is the 20 amp ESC would have been fine given the coils were not interrupted. And you can see right here, see if I get you guys a really good view of this now. You can see those broken leads. Right here, there's 2 that are not attached to anything. 3 that aren't attached to anything right there. And then on this, it looks like there's 2. It appears that there's 2 there, and then 3 there. Now, did these come from here? Or did those go to there? There's a couple right here. A couple, 3 of them right there. Hold on, let's see if we can. Oh, that's Phillips. I meant to grab flat. Okay, so flat bladed. See, there's some right there. So really, in order to fix that, you would have to probably install a short chunk of wire. And then when you're done, your leads would be, see, these are glued together. They were just to keep it away from the edge of the plane there. They were wanting to suck into the bell housing, which is not good. Anyway, so I'll look at that later, but you can see this motor bracket that holds it in. It's got a collar it sits in. So that actually was a pretty decent little motor. So the next step for us is going to be to take the new motor, and the first step, the absolute first step, is to see if the collet will fit, which I'm getting a little nervous now. Yeah. That's a little bit too small. So, and the other thing you can see is this is just probably like major overkill here. I'm just trying to think, do I not have another spinner? Yeah, if you have to work it that hard to get it in the collet, there's a good chance it's not going to work well. I have that thing that would work, that would hold a collet, except that it's broken, so not going to work so hot. I could do it with one blade and then do a counterweight on one side. You can't actually do that, by the way, in case you're wondering. But not 100% sure. I got to think about this for a second. Alright guys, so I had to pause it so I could get this canopy put back together. And I know you guys have seen I've repaired canopies before like this, and to be honest, it looks pretty bad, but who cares what it looks like? At this point in a plane experience, you're kind of like, no, I'm content with just having the plane so it'll fly. And if you haven't seen my video, I did one here the other day about fixing the Arcus M's canopy, and it does look like, you know, you had some sort of a bird strike or something like that, but the reality is there comes a time in a plane's life, for me, especially when you fly a lot of foamies, where it's like, whatever, I just want to fly the thing. You know, looking good is a commodity that's worth fighting for, but usually not by the time you've crashed it 2 or 3 times. Once you get a couple crashes behind you, you're not really too worried about how nice it looks. You're just more worried about getting the thing in the air. And especially a plane that you've got a lot of, you know, like effort, lights and whatnot into it. And you can just build that stuff up a couple of different layers, and it's kind of amazing how good it works. But anyway, sorry about that side note into my friend needed some help on that, so I wanted to make sure it was here and setting up, and then later on we'll just go and trim the plastic off with a pair of scissors. Take like 3 seconds, but you gotta let it set up. Okay, so my thought was, as I was thinking about this is probably the next issue. The electronics are another issue, but they won't happen yet. And this is, just so you know guys, this collet, prop, adapter, everything was like $4, but then the prop blades I replaced with stuff that comes from the Consendo. So those are a little bit more valuable. So I sort of feel bad. I don't want to waste it. But at the same time, oh boy, I wonder if my collet for this thing is the right size. Because I have another 5mm collet coming for this. And as you can see on my, yeah, this is a 5mm, this is a 4mm. That's awesome. So that means the collet that came with my spinner for this plane may actually be appropriate. The other thing is, well, this one's bigger than it needs to be. But I'm just kind of curious, because nobody's saying you can't borrow a collet. You can take a collet back off as long as you don't damage it. And it doesn't really matter because this collet's not the right collet anyway. Okay, so this one's got that Allen set screw, so we'll go ahead and loosen the Allen. Now this probably won't work, but I'm just curious to see if it will. Oh buddy, look at that. That is a perfect fit. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, I'm getting all sorts of bad ideas now. Oh yeah, that thing that thing fits perfect, and it looks nice too. You know what's happening, guys. Ooh yeah, that's not gonna fit so good. Those blades are too thin. But anyway, just in thinking out loud here, that is going to work really nice. It's going to look good. A little teeny bit more nose weight. The black colored motor just really suits this plane well. But I refuse to use my super expensive turbo spinner for this application. I'm just not going to do it. Maybe I'll buy another one of these in the near future to make this right. By the way, these turbo spinners are, I don't know, they're not overly expensive. I got this at a Loft Hobbies, but the reason I don't want to compromise is because I might need this to size things up on the ASH 26, which is here, and there's not been much progress on it because I have this thing when I have a brand new plane that's really tempting to just rush through. I usually work on other planes that have needed attention prior to getting said new plane, which is just totally weird, but it's just one of my weird behaviors that I do. Oh, we could look inside of here, because it did come with this collet, which would be potentially satisfactory. That's quite a bit too big. Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, we've ruled out the easy stuff. Now I got to do some more searching, guys. More searching. But before we get too far along in searching, I'll tell you my plan is to drill this out, making sure that I have a gap between each of these leaves. I would be drilling it out. So, you know what? It's a $4 thing. And worst case scenario, I just have to put a fixed prop on there. But let's pause it for a second. I want to check something else. Okay, the something else I want to check is I actually had a fixed blade on this before. So I'm going to go get that from my prop bag upstairs. Okay, so I had this on here before. And as I recall, it was a little bit big. So I'm curious if I could cheat to get the folding prop portion to work for me. Okay, so you see how this gets tapered way down to like almost nothing? Do you see that, guys? That means it's been squeezed closed on a very, very small prop shaft. So what I can do is I can take a screwdriver and I can insert the screwdriver and I can walk this open just a little bit. You want to be careful you don't ding it up too bad. Okay, see how the leaves are spreading? See how the leaves are spreading? The leaves are spreading. The leaves are spreading. You can see this has those thread holes on it. The thread marks on it, as though I had tapped the... That's because it was biting onto a threaded shaft of this deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and see if I can get it to fit onto the prop shaft. The longer the leaves on the collet are, the more flexibility you have. But bearing in mind that if you have them way too big, then what's going to happen is it's not going to make a square bite, and so the prop, while you may get it to bite, it's going to wiggle a lot. Oh, glorious fit! Yes! Okay, so that means, worst case scenario, I have to modify this now to receive this. So then now there's 3 components installed in this one deal. Okay? So this thing is what actually pushes the leaves back together. Okay? So we slide this all the way down the shaft. Okay, all the way down. Okay? Then we push it until it's flush. That's the best way, because then you know you'll get a nice flush fit. Okay, then the second thing you do is now we have to decide how we want to handle this. Do we want to drill a hole bigger? Because understanding that drilling a hole bigger here, it's not necessarily going to compromise our ability to use this again. Whoops, I put that in backwards, sorry. Okay. It won't necessarily compromise our ability to use this again, but it's certainly not going to be quite as easy to get it to center. Okay? So that's a heck of a lot easier doing that than it is trying to go. Now, there's one other complication. You see that little lip it's going to hit? Ooh, that could be a problem. So far we've got one other thing we got to do too. We got to open up this hole. It's got to be, what was that just fell through? Oh, those are the nuts. Let's pick those things up. We got our nuts for the bolts. Looks like my grandpa had drilled a small hole here to receive the old motor. You see how this has a keeper on it? Well, that keeper needs to be allowed to spin without touching, because it'll just cause friction and eventually drill its own hole or catch it on fire. So we need to open that up. And this has 4 holes instead of 3, so we'll probably try to take one of the 4 holes. Just out of curiosity, this is a machine thread here. And it feels like it's metric or something different. So we'll have to find some screws that'll go into there. We got to open this center hole. But to be honest with you, I mean, this is a more average size for what we're trying to do anyway. And just out of curiosity, this thing is looks like an 8.4E, and we went up to a 9.57. So significantly more power being drawn through this configuration. Now, the only thing I'm nervous about before I modify all this stuff is I probably need to make sure that the motor should work. So now that we have sort of a plan, now would be the time, because before I modify this to where I can't go back to that, now would be the time to, well, hold on a second. See how this tapers down to like almost nothing at the top of the hole? I wonder if I could just cut this off. And if I cut that off, oh, buddy, it would fit perfect. That is pretty tempting, guys, because then I don't have to modify that. Oh, man. That's good stuff. And then even if some of this sticks through, that's fine, because it's going to go into there. I don't know. We'll see. One way or another, let's test this next. That's our next step. So our next step is going to require getting these to match up with the electronic speed control, which incidentally we have these set up with these little really dinky ones, so they're obviously not going to go. So in my experience, the best way to take those off is to actually go through the desoldering process, which is not an overly hard thing. But step one would be going ahead and here it is. We've fought hard not to take the wing off. We're going to take the wing off anyway, so we can move this electronic speed control over. Gosh, I thought this would be a quick project, guys. I'm sorry. We're 25 minutes into this. What have we been doing? Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Don't you be sticking. This is the weather strip that we added. Ah, oh, dang it. That's unfortunate. I didn't expect that would happen. Evidently, the weather strip was allowed to slip. And luckily, the stuff that was in there, the glue we used, was nice enough to come off. So anyway, you learn something new all the time, right? Okay, so let's unplug this wing and let's lay it aside. Let's put it with its big brother, sister, whatever this thing is. Okay, now we can unplug the electronic speed control. And of course it's glued in too. That's how hard you got to pull to get them out. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we should be able to much more easily do this. I need that knife. So this knife is going to be used to cut the heat shrink off of these. Start on the hard side because you have something to push against. Cut. 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 Okay, so once it's cut, now you can just take and peel that back. And if you have pliers, it's kind of handy. You can take the pliers and just roll, and then you can support the rest of it with your fingers. Okay? So then, take your soldering iron, clean the tip again. This soldering iron's like really pissed off at me right now because I let it sit for so long. Okay, so we're heating it up, heating it up, heating it up, and then it's just going to fall off. But if you do it neatly, it's a lot easier the next time you go to use them again. Okay? See how that goes? Pretty simple. So anyway, guys, the reason I dragged you through this whole thinking process, I've mentioned this before in other videos, but if you haven't seen all of them, you won't know. There's a lot to be learned, and I'm learning a lot from other people too, on ways to problem solve. Because when you get into this hobby first, you start thinking, oh, well, I just need to go buy that thing. Well, yeah, on some stuff you probably should just go buy that thing. But on other projects like this, it's like, I don't know. I'm just going to make it work with what I got. And sure, that leaves you a little bit more vulnerable to having some problems. But as long as you're capable of handling some problems, like motors not working up to snuff, then it's no big deal. Just learn every time you do something and it didn't work out well. If you never try any of this stuff, you're never gonna learn anything new. Okay, get off of there. So now the other thing you can do, if you really want to make it easy on yourself, is you take your forceps, clamp it onto the tip where it's got strength. You don't clamp it if it's too weak, because it'll collapse that piece. Okay, then you can just peel the wire out as soon as it gets hot, neatly. I'm going to see if this one falls. Come on, just get off of there. Okay, very good. Alright, so next step is to go ahead and get some appropriately sized doohickeys to plug into these motors. So let's go see if I've got these out here. And we're about out of memory, so this is going to be part one. Oh yes, those doohickeys are the correct size. And I do not like the way that this is built. Although, now that I just got that taken off, Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. This is tempting. I'm kind of curious how this motor would run on this 40 amp ESC. Because what the heck, if we got a 30 amp in there, why don't we just put a 40 amp in there, right? Okay, we're doing it that way. We're going to try it. I still don't like the way this is, so I'll probably redo it. Let's test it. Alright guys, I'm going to be out of memory in about 30 seconds, so why don't we leave it there and we'll pick this back up on part 2 of the Sunbird motor upgrade. Thanks for watching guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.